the negatives, were an issue, and I just moved back from New York when we decided that we would potentially do a book, and so the contact sheets that were all cut up was all I had, and I had to go and into my storage and take out all my neg boxes with no idea where they were, or even if I had them still, because obviously, there's just millions of negs in piles. So after a day of looking through envelope after envelope, there they were. We had them, and because they'd never really been used, I only did it for me and for Lee. They were unpublished, so that made that very interesting to suddenly give them life when they hadn't been used before.
Yeah.
And there they were.
But then that really started to take shape, didn't it? When we got in the publishers, and it was like, well, right, what else can we put in here? And that was when we started doing the.
Yeah, it was probably in the good spirit of the Dante show, where it was all just put together with bits of string and sellotape and stolen, begged, borrowed, blagged.
We started to do the detective work then, didn't we? Of who was doing what, and then you went Mira. She's got all the clothes.
Mira's gifted wardrobe from Lee. Yep.
So that was the trip to LA to get all that documented.
Yes.
And then Melanie got involved with the
writing
and tracking people down, which was pretty good of her to sort of like just start asking the questions. What have you got? Is there any sketches or any memorabilia that you've got from that show?
Snaps, notes,
anything. Sean Lean gave us the original Thorns, and so the ball started to roll. But the other thing we found out was obviously that V&A had also been in touch with all of these people to get the same thing, but they weren't asking for the old sort of diary kind of information that we wanted, which I think is what sort of stands basically the project in good stead, because we've got stuff that nobody else has given, otherwise it would have already been gone to the V&A. So then we got in with Future City.
That's right.
And took the project to them, and then so here we are. Foils, 2 years later.
I'll never forgive you.
But 2 years hard work, and we've got these, we've got, amazing content for a show that is...
Well, it's going to get bigger, so the New York one, we can start putting up some clothes, the stateside, we can start putting up some of the clothes, so it'll be just a bigger and bigger exhibition.
I think it's that idea that we've got a story that is about 2 hours in McQueen's life that made him famous. And that's it. We're not focusing on anything else. It's just 2 hours, a slot in time, backstage, who was involved, and that's it.
Before the money took over. This is the last show before the money took over. So really, it wasn't. I didn't go there to work so much, apart from Lee, saying come back and take some snaps, because he didn't like photographers backstage in the early days. He had to put up with it later on. I think really after this show, he had to embrace the media attention, but really up until this show, he didn't entertain it, he didn't like it. So he was very private backstage. So I was quite surprised when he suggested I come down and I could bring a camera. A stinky, dirty church, a very interesting church, but absolutely a grubby preparation area. Everybody was panicking about, this getting carried away about ghosts and spirits of the devil and the Hawksmoor story, which was all based on fiction, but everyone sort of got it confused with fact. Strange happenings apparently whilst prepping for the show. It was quite bizarre that church got sort of handed over to the fashion set for an evening, and then of course when the show was over, all the winos probably started queuing up and coming back in to get their crash pad back for the night. I'd read, there was a book about Hawksmoor called Hawksmoor, which Sharon had read, Sharon Dowsett, makeup artist. She lent me the book, I read it, then Lee read it, and it just suddenly, it was one of those books that went around for a bit, and because obviously Old Street is in the middle of all the Hawksmoor churches, I think Lee decided that would be an amazing venue, given that the show was based on Dante.
Yeah, exactly. He'd already been getting into the dark
he
side
was into
of
the Dante
Dante
thing, and it just fitted. Once he'd read the Hawksmoor book, that there was this sort of theory that there was secret pentagrams in the church.
Well, he really played up on it, didn't he?
Of course he did, but that was part of the energy. Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Gave everybody the little fright, which is why I think there's a lot of the tongue outs in some of the pictures, and the girls were sticking their tongue out because that's the sign of the devil. So yeah, it was very tongue in cheek. It was very tongue in cheek, but it got the atmosphere where it needed to be for the kind of event. And it kind of was a bit Halloweeny, in its execution. Yeah. Lots of candles, big lights outside the church coming in. Very, very kind of like a horror movie set, I guess. So it worked. I mean, it absolutely worked. It definitely put him. On another level. And then he was very closely watched from the Dante show, and then things really changed for him, straight after the next show. So within sort of 5-6 months, he was he was a totally different level.
It actually got some serious bit of money in from the Italians this show. That's why.
It basically put him in, and obviously he got Givenchy really from the back of this show. I think more than any other. Although he did do one more show before he started with Givenchy, but I think this was the one. Obviously, negotiations take a lot of time, but this is the one that basically hooked Givenchy in as putting him forward as a player, as potentially their head of the fashion house, Givenchy, head designer. I think it was a very important show for him, a very big show indeed, and really sort of established him in a much more of a showman. That his shows became much more about not just about the designs and the clothes and his direction, but the whole performance aspect. So he was very much about that. He was a showman. So it wasn't just about the collection. It was also, how it was presented, and he was always trying to kind of create this wow factor on the catwalk, either with the location or with some effects. The rain. One of the catwalks he had rain. Another one he had fire. So he was very much about that. It was very much like an event, a spectacle. It changed him. I think this show changed him, for sure. I think it was the last of the beg, borrow and steal shows as well for him, relying very heavily on his support network, which is why I did this book, because it's all about Lee. Now he's gone. It's he's big and larger than life character, but the reality is that he was successful really as the support he received, especially in the early years. So it was other people's belief in him that propelled him to where he ended up, as much as anything. It was everybody that could put him there, from the models to the assistants to
everybody there was like amazingly talented, which I guess in a way there was something about him that could spot that.
Well, absolutely, he was very supportive because people believed in it, they saw the vision.
Yeah.
But he did rely very heavily, as we all do when we're starting out, very, very heavily on favours and people donating their time and talent for a belief.